understand you talk, but you have no gramba.
Because all of the systems those systems, there are certain systems.
Yeah.
There are certain sort of like System 1 entities in the global economy who are operating with profit as their motive, and the outcome of their actions are going to be the potential destruction of the entire system.
Yeah, absolutely.
And to plan a economy would be to would in some respects would be to attempt to put in place a sort of System 4, System 5 kind of thing. Somebody to think about the long-term longevity of the system over the interests of any individual entity, and something to adjudicate between those interests to decide, okay.
Yeah, exactly.
You fossil fuel companies, you're just not allowed to operate anymore. I'm sorry, like you can't be allowed to continue because you are jeopardizing the longevity of the very complicated and fragile ecological system of this planet.
Yeah, it's funny when I read all of this stuff, I kind of generally think obviously about lacking a System 4 and 5, but how there's like also I mainly just think about System 2 because I think about like this complete lack of communication. Maybe that's just because of my job. Maybe that's just because of how I feel like helpless to really do anything where I work in retail. But like markets obviously require not having System 2s, right? Like obviously there's like, you know, a little bit of like what's the word when like corporations do like illegally kind of like talk to each other to like coordinate prices,
insider trading kind of thing.
Yeah, something like that.
Equivalent to that.
Yeah.
Not market.
Not really an official
not
System
a financial
2.
system, but like
not a System 2 for our benefit, right?
Yeah.
But it's like any kind of markets, whether they be democratic, socialist, or otherwise.
Well, there's a lot of this story which is very much the implementation of like horizontal communication.
Yeah.
But it's all for the sake of
making money.
Exactly. Yeah, the efficiency sort of for financial gain.
Yeah.
Based on the profit motive of the companies kind of
profit
thing.
motives.
Not on the interests of the workers kind of thing.
Yeah. Profit motives, baby. We need more money.
Yeah. But it does point to that distinction between like doesn't necessarily matter how you orchestrate the system. What's really important is the class relationships that are the basis of that society.
Yeah, exactly, and the social relations therein. Everything we read gets me to think about the Ella Meakson's Wood, and just about the transition between capitalism and feudalism, and about really attempting to build different social relations and how to do that. Blah 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 blah. That's got to be the reading I've got the most from so far. Obviously, because it was a whole book, but also just because
we have read another whole book.
We have read another whole book. We should say welcome. Auxiliary statements. I'm Jack.
I am Dan. Welcome, Jack.
How are you, Dan?
Welcome, the listener.
Welcome, the listener. Intentionally not pluralized.
No, it's the royal listener. Is that how it works? I don't know.
The royal listener, the Queen Mother.
I think I'm well.
Cool. You seem well.
I've been partaking of quite a lot of forest walks.
Oh, which you've been going up the hill?
Up the hill.
Cool.
It's been nice.
Nice.
Yesterday was very nice weather. I went in the sea very briefly.
It's
good fun.
Yeah, for the royal listener, Dan told me he was going to go swimming in the ocean because it was warmer
it was
the other day.
It was like 11 degrees.
Exactly. It was about like 52 in Fahrenheit. Although I will say, I like walking around, I walked back from work and I was like, all right, I kind of see what he means.
See what I mean, yeah.
It wasn't as bone-chillingly cold as it.
Yeah, I ended up, on my walk, I ended up wearing 3 layers rather than 5.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know what that communicates. But...
We got a lot of snow coming up, I think, starting Sunday.
Apparently this weekend,
yeah.
We also had an impromptu celebration of the 1st of February.
Really?
Which is, I think, for the Christians or for the Catholics, it's Candlemas.
Really?
But
That was just a
for
band.
the sort of certain pre-Christian religions that I'm reticent to call pagan.
Oh,
And
okay.
also for certain New Age pagans.
Sir,
It
it's
was
also...
it was Imbolc, which is the beginning of
What are you saying?
pagan spring on the
What?
1st.
In bulk.
Yeah.
Or, yeah, for
So
certain...
we had a big bonfire and attempted
lovely.
to mark that.
communicate with the spirits or of some
Something like
kind.
that. Just mark the passage of time.
Lovely. Lovely.
Because time is the one thing that doesn't seem
And
to
you
be
need to,
doing anything
yeah, I
at
was
the
gonna
moment.
say, you need to be reminded that time is passing. Time is indeed passing.
And I am, I mean, this year more than any, but I think on any other year, I am now quite committed to the idea that winter needs another festival.
Okay, when? Now?
I'm proposing the 1st of February.
Oh, okay, sure.
Yeah.
How about this? In America, we have Groundhog Day. It was the 2nd of February, and it was yesterday, and it was lovely. It was very good.
Nice,
The
What did the groundhog do?
the groundhog came to go out of his hole, and then he went back down into it, thus symbolizing
is it
6
still
more weeks
called
of
Phil?
winter. Punxsutawney Phil. I
It's
believe
Phil.
is his
It's
name.
Phil. Like presumably, it's not the same. How long has Punxsutawney Phil been?
I think a long time.
I mean, obviously, my only reference to this is the
film Groundhog's Day, yeah. I was trying to explain Groundhog, the actual day, to someone the other day, and they were just like, what are you talking about? They were like, a little groundhog comes out of his hole and predicts the weather? I was like, yeah, he's always right. So yeah, 6 more weeks of winter.
This is why you're saying it's going to snow at the weekend.
Yes,
Yeah.
the groundhog told me it's going to snow. If that's not pagan, I don't know what is. I remember a book, one of my favorite books, Gore Vidal's Julian, all about the Roman emperor. He calls Christianity something like a pagan Eastern mystery religion. I think we should bring that back. I like calling it an Eastern mystery relion.
Yeah.
I think that's cool. He calls the people he calls Christians Galileans, which is kind of like a subtle dig.
Yeah.
But, good book.
Well, yeah. I don't know. It's got kind of culty vibes.
It does have culty vibes.
I'm like
Yeah, very much.
eating flesh and drinking blood.
Yeah, especially, sorry, Tolkien Catholicism, no offense. But also all the Puritan stuff. Okay, well, maybe we
Yeah.
this
is definitely another topic for another day.
Yeah, exactly.
But Puritans.
Puritans.
Losers.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. Absolutely. What else has been going on? It's
So yeah, happy in bulk.
happy in bulk, happy Groundhog's Day, and happy birthday to my dad, because today is his birthday. Dad, I know you're listening because you're our one consistent listener. Happy birthday. Love you. Just spoke to you, so I don't have much to say. Happy 45th birthday.
Happy birthday.
Yeah. What else is going on? I've been separating out all my seeds for the ones to start sowing in February, but I feel like my carrots and it's like some leeks and it's like I don't think I'm gonna start doing this until late February. It just seems
wait a
like
few
it's too
weeks.
cold.
Yeah. Particularly if it's going to snow.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I don't know anything about this.
My
So your
potatoes
carrots
ready.
in the ground.
Yes.
Carrots and parsnips.
Okay.
This is what I understand.
Not in like a little thing.
No, the what's he called? Our
Oh yeah, what
our
is his
YouTube
name?
friend
Yeah. Oh, I'm not gonna remember.
Charles Dowding.
Charles Dowding. Yeah. Oh, well done. Yeah.
It's a tidbit that I picked up from one of his videos.
So your
He
carrots.
said I think he said he sows his carrots and his parsnips in the ground and everything else he sows. in
Yeah,
the
I'm interested
greenhouse.
to see how that
What's the word?
works.
I don't know.
For our listeners who aren't in the know, for the allotment that Dan and I potentially are gonna, well, hopefully something's gonna happen soon. I got a lot of broad beans growing there. That's about it right now. But we're gonna be doing no-till farming, which is basically you just get a bunch of compost and put it on top
After
of
we
the
dug up
ground.
about half of the ground,
Exactly.
we then decided.
We're like, you know what? Leave it. I'm interested to see how carrots do in a no-till environment because it seems like, I don't know, they're just going to stop growing and be like stubby little carrots once they hit the hard soil. I don't know.
Sure.
We'll see. I'm not really excited to grow carrots. I like growing leeks, potatoes, big things, hardy things. The carrot, maybe it's just because I've never grown any
You
successfully.
can grow big hearty carrots.
That's true.
Or maybe
That's true.
Such things have been known.
Such things have been done.
We've got some carrots in our bed in the garden.
And they're doing well,
Some
right?
of which were planted like 10 months ago.
Yeah.
And they was like sown in with other things.
Uh-huh.
And then after our experience, I thought it was a bad idea to sow them in with other things, but I think we just didn't crop the other things in the way that we should have done, right?
Sure.
Like, you can grow your carrots in amongst your
What's
lettuces.
the biggest your carrots have gotten?
Ooh. The top of one of them looks like it might be
Oh, no way.
like two, maybe not quite, maybe 10 pence piece on
Wow.
the top. I don't know how deep it goes.
It's like a quarter for
I
American
haven't dug any
listeners.
of them up. I really ought to do
Okay.
it's sort of,
put it
I
back
mean,
in.
there's so few. It's like the 6 leaks that we've got. Like, when would I have a...
Yeah.
I don't know.
Oh, I love leeks.
And they're not very big. They might
yeah.
be getting bigger, but
Yeah.
it seems unlikely at this point.
Yeah. The carrot does not excite me. I'll say that.
Okay.
The potato, on the other hand, my room is just filled with potatoes. My chili plant that a very nice fellow allotment goer gave me, she grew from seed in the Seychelles. She was like, this might not survive through the winter, and it's dead. So it's very sad. I got some very spicy peppers from it, though. That's that story.
There we go. There we go.
Pepper tree is dead, or whatever it was, little bush. Yeah, that's our allotment updates. What's been going on in the world? More death, more destruction.
Yeah. We're reporting from COVID Island.
Yeah. Oh, God. Yeah. COVID Island, COVID continent, which is one of the continents that I'm originally from. The other continent that I'm originally from, kind of doing all right, actually. Yeah. One of my cousins just had a kid today, which is pretty cool.
Ah,
So congratulations to you, my
congratulations to
man.
them.
And yeah. I don't know. Anything else? That's about
Life's
it.
progressing.
Life is progressing. It's definitely progressing. There's something I wanted to bring up that happened today, but it wasn't the disaster. It was something else. I forgot what it was. Whatever.
You mean the general disaster? There hasn't been a specific disaster that I've mentioned.
Just this day in my life.
Oh, I see.
Which other than that.
Okay. It's gonna go down as
Yeah.
it's memorable.
It's definitely memorable. I will say NHS, good. Love the NHS. Don't we, folks? This week, Dan and I reread People's Republic of Wal-Mart. What a book.
It's very good. Very good. Very good.
Very, very good. Dan lent me this book a year ago now. Probably more than a year ago now, Jesus. Pre-COVID. And I had no real introduction to any of these ideas before, which is when you should read this book, really. And yeah, it just totally blew me away. Because I think that we went on a walk and we were having a conversation about, like, I was like, well, like, how could you, like, centrally plan an economy? Like, we're talking about the Soviet Union and stuff. And you brought up the idea, this is before I had any, like, exposure to our boy Stafford Beer's ideas, and you're, like, likened it to a biological system, right? Like, attempting to, this was on Summer Hill. I remember this really vividly for
happened?
some reason. Yeah.
Okay, I don't remember. Yeah.
Because I think, yeah. I don't know why I remember this so vividly. And then you lent me this book, and I was like, oh, there you go. Obviously, this book doesn't answer every question, but this is, I would say, the reason this book is so valuable is because it gives you ammunition to respond to the, well, what else would we do other than capitalism? This is our best bet. What else? There's no other way.
Yeah, this is your starting point for beginning to consider what a planned economy might look like and mean.
Yeah, democratic economy.
And it was something that I was like recoiled at whenever it was suggested to some extent when I was exposed to it in the past, because it smacks so much of the Soviet Union to some extent. The idea of planning is almost feels like it's automatically connected with dictatorship to some extent, or at least like centralized
bureaucracy.
Bureaucracy. But just the idea of some planner in a central office in Moscow or wherever deciding quite what quantity of everything you're going to need 5 years in advance, kind of thing.
It's scary.
And it's gotten the idea seems, well, me 3 or 4 years ago, the idea had such a bad rap, or like the history of it had was such a poor one, that it was almost like you sort of put it out of mind, even if it left you with, as it did me, with something of a sort of lacking void for what the organization of a non-capitalist economy might be. Other than the kind of like heavily decentralized alternative.
Yeah.
But as we saw from sort of like Beerian cybernetics to some extent, like you can have this synthesis of desensitized decentralized rather in a sort of anarchist fashion, but also maintain some amount of central oversight or yes, as you say, coherency. Not things that our anarchist comrades would automatically be opposed to, so I don't mean to slander anarchism.
Yeah. No. We're not slandering anarchism here at all. Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Because this is a little bit of like a red pill moment, because it's like you are just bought up to be like, you don't even think about how we distribute goods in modern society at all. Like you don't even question it, because you just go, oh yeah, you buy things that you need and you get money from your wages. And to be exposed to the idea that it's like, no, you don't need prices. You don't need the price signal, because that's the old argument, right? It's like, if you even question this at all, it's like, well, the best way to distribute goods fairly is to have a price signal, and you work the job that you work, and you can afford what you can afford. Everybody can afford, the basics, subsistence and and whatnot. And you just let supply and demand figure the rest out, and people who want to get it can get it. Oh, you don't have a Lamborghini? That's just because you haven't tried hard enough. Stuff like that, right? But when you realize that it's like, this book makes the argument, it's like, no, you don't need price signals at all. You could just, come up with other ways to get the information that you need to distribute goods evenly, way more fairly, and in a democratic way. Because the main thing to take away from this book is that, like, the way that we organize things now is extremely unfair. Mm-hmm. You can work much harder, actually, than someone who's extremely wealthy and has access to all sorts of stuff you don't have, and only just get by on a subsistence basis. So, yeah, you really do have to imagine, kind of like, view the world that we're living in from outside a little bit to see, like, oh, there are other ways of organizing, and that this is just a mode of production. This isn't the way things have always been. Mm-hmm.
Coming back to what you were saying about this book providing you with ammunition to make the counter case kind of thing. So much of what this book is an attempt to expose how much utter nonsense there is in the conventional story that you're told, both in one, how much of our economy is reliant on market forces, and then secondly, how much nonsense there is actually in the mainstream economics literature when it comes to explaining what markets even do.
Absolutely, yeah.
And there are really funny bits of this book where there several times there are sort of like capitalist ideologues of one kind or another who pry a bit too deeply into how the economy actually functions and really come away with not the answers they wanted to have.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or are really forced to like turn a blind eye to what they find to some extent.
Yeah.
But I guess that's the case for so much of mainstream economics kind of thing. It has this massive fixation on market relations and the relationships that happen between economic entities, between firms and corporations.
Yeah.
And don't give any amount of consideration to what it is that actually happens inside of corporations.
Yeah.
And big companies, well, companies of all sizes, but big companies in particular. There is a point in this where, coming back to our episode a few weeks ago, where we were talking about black boxes.
Yeah.
There's an extent to which mainstream economics treats corporations as the ultimate black box. They just really do not want to know what goes on inside of them.
Well, it's more than that, because they like actively like, it's more than just not wanting to know. It's actively looking away from the information, right?
Yes,
because like one of the kind of like classic passages in this book is like giving you the argument of like, the marketplace isn't the best way to distribute goods fairly, and that's because you're not looking at it like a mode of production. You're looking at it like this like thing handed down to us from God, and it's basically, it gives you just the basic argument of like, sometimes things that are profitable are actively harmful, and sometimes things that are necessary and you need, like medicine, you're not going to make any money selling them, so you're going to get horrible healthcare. The other example of like the opposite is fossil fuels. It's like, this is actively harming our world, but it's really profitable, so we'll keep doing it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there are a few like basic criticisms of capitalism that come up in this book. One you've been mentioning, just like there is something incredibly unethical in the distribution
Yeah.
In the grotesque lack of freedom that so many of us experience.
Which is what we're always told is like the epitome of capitalism.
Yes,
It's freedom. You can buy whatever you want.
Yeah. But the starting point, the ultimate sort of jumping off point that they take is the distinction between use value and exchange value.
Yeah.
The line that they keep trotting out is the kind of like, there is some correspondence between the usefulness of goods and the value for which they attract on the market, the amount of money that they can be sold for, but the two do not correlate perfectly, and in actual fact they lead to some grotesque disparities like the ones you were mentioning. From a use value, from a usefulness standpoint, we really need to develop new types of antibiotics.
Yeah,
there is
absolutely.
A crisis in antibiotics and antibiotic resistance, but there is no incentive from a profitability standpoint for any corporations to actually, or any pharmaceutical corporations to engage in that kind of research.
Or at least there won't be until it's way too late.
Far too late.
Yeah.
And as you say, there's great financial incentives for many fossil fuels corporations to continue to extract fossil fuels from the earth and sell them and burn them.
Yeah.
It's saying, but from a long-term durability of the
exactly.
ecosystem, it's totally disastrous.
Yeah, a little short-sighted.
Only has disastrous outcomes.
Yeah. I mean, it's the same thing. Obviously, being from the COVID continent, I can tell you that healthcare, being a commodity bought and traded on the marketplace, is like that is so clearly a disaster. Once you just take a little step back and critically think about it for a second, it's like, wait, why would you buy and trade something that you need for your health? Because they bring up the example of like, oh, it's much more profitable for a pharmaceutical company to not treat your cancer right away, but to keep you on the hook and keep giving you chemo and stuff like that, which is what happens.
Yeah, pharmaceutical companies are far more interested in keeping you alive for a very long term with a condition.
Yeah.
For the long term, rather than curing you instantly, because they want to have the money that you pay for your prescription for the rest of your life.
Yeah, and it's
much easier for them to produce statins and have everybody be on statins.
Exactly. It is crazy too, because I think that is the big idea of this book, is like, you really need to take a step back and engage in critical thinking for a sec, because it's like a lot of the most ardent defenders of like the free market, at least these days, their brains are kind of being a little bit penetrated by like the moderate progressivism that we're seeing within the Democratic Party, right? Where you're seeing like, maybe we should have like a public option for everybody. And it's funny because you see people kind of going, okay, yeah, maybe that's right. I talked to some GPs and, they said the same thing. But it's like, once you really take a step back and don't just view the market as like this monolithic market, this thing that will always exist, and just view it as like, well, is this the best way of doing things? You come to the conclusion that no, of course it's not,
I mean, if there's one way you can define or think about neoliberalism as it exists. The father of neoliberalism, Hayek, one of his great discoveries was to realize that, truthfully, that there are so many fictions in the sort of like classical economics description of both how markets function and then also how human beings function. And what Hayek realized was that no, you need a state to intervene.
Exactly.
With the intention for him of creating markets, because he still thought that markets were the only way to communicate the information necessary to organize a very complicated economic system.
Yeah.
But he didn't believe that human beings were inherently rational in the way that classical economics would have done. And he also didn't believe that markets sort of like reached some kind of homeostatic equilibrium in the way that classical economics did as well. So there's somebody who realized quite a lot of the flaws, but what he came away with was a much more interventionist form of sort of like political ideology.
Yeah.
That has come to dominate.
Definitely come to dominate. Although, yeah, it's funny because you say that. I suppose maybe the main point of this book, I feel like I keep saying that, but is that the reason it's called People's Republic of Wal-Mart is because they make the point that even though you're constantly told, look at the Soviet Union, economic planning doesn't work, you think that would be more democratic? There's a big guy sitting in a chair telling you how many shoes you can have, something like that. They go, you know, within the capitalist system, economic planning is everywhere. And the places that it is present at, are the most successful capitalist entities out there. So Walmart, obviously Amazon, they also use, I believe, Target as an example. And to kind of view that as economic planning, you kind of have to make the definition of an economy as something that you might not be familiar with, which would just be, correct me if I'm wrong, but they kind of define it as the supply chain from like raw resource extraction basically all the way to POS, point of sale. So it's like if you're making a baseball, you know, it's where you get the cork, where you get the leather, the people who manufacture that into a baseball, the distributors, and then the people who sell you the baseball. And when you take a look at how Walmart specifically operates, they basically operate within this huge amoeba-like system that, because they have a monopoly, such a huge monopoly on retail, they're able to take these people at different points of the supply chain and basically like kind of bring them into like a basically a planned economy from people who extract the resources, you know, oil, everything that they need to make their products, bananas, farmers, whatever, all the way to when it's on the shelf in a Walmart, right?
Yeah. And the book makes the point that like Walmart isn't particularly unique. They were just like pioneers of this kind of thing.
And they just did it very well.
Yeah. And I mean, the founder of Walmart's a historically famous miser. So sort of money saving and penny pinching.
Yeah. I like at one
sort
point
of synonymous with that corporation more than
Yeah.
most, although obviously it's in every corporation's interests to limit its outgoings.
At one point, don't they say in the book, they were like, he realized the place that he could save money on was labor. It's like, yeah, no shit.
But they do make the point that like, one of the innovations that Walmart made, they were one of the first places they opened their first like distribution center in the early 70s kind of thing. Realizing that it's incredibly inefficient for a supermarket, say, to have a separate supplier for every single thing that they sell, and to have to interact with all of those separate sort of like sub enterprises, I suppose. Think of all the communication that they have to make to put in all of those separate requests to have their stock filled with all of these different things. Much easier for a supermarket to deal with only one supplier, which if you are a believer in the idea that markets at all levels are the most efficient way of doing things, then you would think that all of those price signals that were happening between the supermarket and all of their various different suppliers, all of the possibilities for other companies to come in and intervene, to undercut each other, you would have thought that would be the most desirable way to run run an economy or run a corporation if you believed that markets at all levels were the best way of organizing something.
Because you'll have suppliers competing with each other to give you the best price, to get you everything done in the quickest way. Same with distributors. And they go, no, that's not true.
Yeah, I mean, there is another way to get the best price, right? And it's just to control the entire distribution chain.
Exactly.
And be such a monolith that everybody cannot but sell to Walmart to some extent. So yeah, that was their first innovation, was to realize that like there's so much waste in energy and money happening that they just sort of like could streamline the entire process. And the other thing that they innovated on very quickly was communication. This would be something that like cybernetics and Stafford Beer would be very acutely aware of. It's such a slow way to transmit information. If you have to transmit through a whole series of different suppliers at different levels, just the more nodes there are in this sort of chain, the slower the transmission of information becomes.
Because businesses don't want to be transparent. Because they're all in competition with each other. It's like, we'll get back to you. But also like so much easier if you can like
introduced things like, well, the introduction of computer technology was massively significant.
Absolutely.
But if you have computers sort of tracking all stock in and out, you can
in real time.
Yes, exactly. You can streamline the whole process.
Yeah, that's the coolest example in the whole book is how they say that once you're bought in this, like, the walls of Walmart, so to speak, it's like once you're part of the supply chain, not only are you just going to make money for the rest of your life, don't worry about it. You work with Walmart, you'll be fine. You only have to make stuff that they want. But the coolest example they gave was, like, as soon as you buy something in Walmart and it gets scanned at the scanners, at, like, the cash registers, all that information about how much stock has gone out goes immediately to the entire supply chain. So everybody from, like, the people, growing the cotton to, stuff that stuffed animal with that you just bought, to, like, the people weaving the fabrics know, okay, Walmart's going to need one more of this thing. That blew my mind. That is so cool.
Yeah.
And then I guess the next, they kind of take it another step further with Amazon, right? Because Amazon kind of adds, like, a little bit of a big brother element to economic planning. Whenever you hear about, like, any tech company kind of, like, selling your data, that's a pretty big part of how Amazon knows what you want. Because that's a pretty big part of, well, how would we centrally plan an economy, or at least democratically plan an economy, is how would you know which people would need what things? How would you know, like, oh, people living in, like, Oxnard need 50,000 shoes, but people living in Ventura only need 49,000 shoes? How would you not mess that up? The way Amazon does that is basically just by stealing your data and going, like, at least that's partially what they do.
Yeah.
They give the example, I don't think this was Amazon, I think it was Walmart. I don't think it was Amazon. I think it was Target, actually, which is another example of kind of economic planning, of their algorithms that they use to guess what people would want to advertise them, these products or whatever, was able to tell that certain women were pregnant before they knew that they were pregnant, and they were sending them ads for, like, maternity clothing. And women would be like, this is weird. What? And then they'd be like, oh, you're pregnant. And it's just like, how the hell did the algorithm know before me?
Presumably they buy, like, pregnant women buy certain things prior to even knowing that they're pregnant, or make certain consumer choices, or at least search for certain things.
Yeah, it's the basic idea of, like, when you check out at Amazon and you're buying, like, Citadel paints, it's like, you will also need these paintbrushes. You will also need plastic glue. It's like you Googled, like, insoles for my shoes, so here's an advertisement for very comfy shoes where you don't need insoles. It's that kind of thing.
Sure, yeah. And what's really fun about that Amazon section is how apparently they make it that we do a great deal of free work for Amazon and its algorithm just by browsing the store on,
by
like,
surfing the web.
Yeah. I mean, they make the point, like, a traditional supermarket cannot know what things that you look at and then put back, what things you put in your basket, wheel around for a bit and then take out again.
Yeah.
Like, what things you come back to and look at over and over again. But Amazon can collect this data on huge numbers of people. But what's interesting about Amazon is that, like, so many of the things that they do are the simplest way.
Yeah.
The best approximation kind of thing. Like, they make the point that they're gathering all this data, but if they wanted to do the most detailed analysis on it possible, it would take, like, present computers the entirety of time to, like, synthesize a perfect representation of the model of the world which is unfolding in front of them. So Amazon have found ways just to do the best approximation kind of thing. It's reminiscent of some of the things we talked about with Stafford beer, right? Like, you don't. Well, I guess the best beering example is the one where they're talking about how the algorithm actually works. And there were initially a lot of fears that, like, not fears, but, like, hyperbolic or suggestions that Amazon might be cultivating really complicated modeling to read everybody's minds almost. Like, to know based on some of your other shopping what other things you might want to have, and almost be ready to send them to you before you'd even ordered it, kind of thing.
Which is a thing they've thought of, actually.
Yeah. But really, their algorithmic model operates basically on only one variable. It's people who bought this thing that you want to buy
Exactly.
also bought X.
Which is stunningly successful.
Yeah.
Slight.
What they've done is they've discounted a huge number of other variables. They make no effort to sort of like categorize buyers in any particular way. They make no effort to categorize items in any particular way. So like, as you were saying, like the shoe and the glue kind of thing, like, the glue doesn't have to be categorized as glue for fixing shoes.
Yeah.
It only has to be the case that people who bought this particular insole also bought this particular type of glue to glue them in. So then all of the sort of computational work has been done by all the human beings who have made that consumer choice over and over again, or that choice to take that thing over and over again. It doesn't need a particularly complicated computer algorithm to work this out. And this is very much similar to what we were talking about when we were talking about the sort of like Chilean cybersyn team's effort to model the Chilean economy. Like they were based upon management cybernetic principles. Like they're only interested in the variables that matter, right?
Exactly.
They can discount everything else. It's only the variables that matter, which are the ones you want to focus on, kind of thing.
Yeah, it's the same thing as the input-output tables. It's like you don't need an entire input-output table for every single resource that's possible in an economy to build a pair of shoes. You just need the things for laces and the things for soles.
Yeah. So what's the point of this? The point of this is it's an effort to demonstrate that the argument that markets are the only way in which you can communicate this information is gumph. And we do not have the computational power to analyze data to model economies in the way that's necessary.
Yeah.
Well, in this particular example, you don't need to be able to analyze every piece of data that could possibly exist. You don't need to perfectly model your system. It's entirely plausible to generate systems which function perfectly well without market signals being the only way to communicate information.
Yeah, totally. And indeed, those market signals are horrible at doing it because they rely on profit, which is lame.
Should we talk about Sears a little bit?
Let's talk about Sears. Sears, that was like the comic relief of the book.
In the chapter on Wal-Mart, they counterpose Wal-Mart to Sears.
Yeah.
Which is a department store, although they also own Kmart, right? So they were sort of
Kmart.
To some extent, a direct competitor of Walmart, at least in the same kind of field.
I will say the Kmart that was in my town is now gone and has been replaced by a Walmart. That's the moral of this story. To give it to you before we tell it.
Because whilst Walmart was removing market mechanisms, removing price signals as the only way to communicate between suppliers and the various supermarket chains or what have you, Sears doubled down on markets and price signals and classical economics in a massive way.
All because of one guy. Because of one Ayn Randian.
Some fan who was a big fan of Ayn Rand.
Yeah, just an idiot. Ran his company into the ground.
Yeah. So basically, what happened is he sort of broke the whole thing up into various different types of department, and then demanded that all those departments like compete with each other in various ways. So all of the departments had to buy the services of other departments, and there was no sort of like joined up thinking. They all had to contract the services of other ones. They were also required to outsource if it would be cheaper, right? So they have an in-house person responsible for doing X, Y, and Z thing, but somehow they find some contractor that's cheaper and they can work around and go outside of their corporate structure. So basically, they set up a system where every department of the corporation was actively working against the best interests of all of the other departments, and therefore the actual longevity of the corporation in and of itself. I mean, they make a ridiculous example where, like, was it like a kids bicycle or scooter or something ended up somehow on the Mother's Day issue for Sears' magazine.
Yeah, exactly.
Just because that department that was attempting to sell kids' toys managed to outcompete something that would have been
like
much more
maternity
sensible
ward.
to have. Yeah, much more sensible to have on the Mother's Day edition kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, suffice to say, it was an entirely ludicrous system.
And that's why Sears is not.
And that's why
with us
Sears does
anymore.
not exist. Sears does not exist.
I used to like
anymore.
going to Sears when I was a kid. It was a pretty fun. It sold everything. Let me give a pretty funny example of how this is just the worst possible way to organize a business. At work, I was like stocking the shelves for like these like cans of like dog food and gravy. So they come in cans, and you buy them in packs of 12, right? And I noticed that we do the same food in 12 packs by 400 grams, 400-gram cans. And then we also do the same thing, it's the exact same food in 12 cans by 356 grams. And the 356-gram ones were £1 more expensive than the other ones. And I went up to my boss and I was like, can I get, like, what's the deal with this? Why are these more expensive? And she said something along the lines of, I don't know, Jack, I don't work for the prices department. And I was just like, okay, that's never going to get fixed. Never mind.
Yeah, you do see things like quite a lot in supermarkets, don't you? You're just like, why is this way? And that?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. It's because, yeah, exactly. It's because there's no coordination within the entity as a whole.
Yeah.
Everybody's working for themselves to compete for the more funding from the, like, whatever bastardized version of System 4 and 5 that they have in their company.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. So then, I guess the question then of the book is, can we use these structures that companies like Target, Walmart, and Amazon, these algorithms that they've created, for democratic purposes? And obviously, at least to me, it seems like if you were to just take the algorithm that Amazon uses, no, absolutely not. Because there's the added thing of like, you bought this, so you might like this, even though that's not the best fit for you, even though it's not the cheapest fit for you. It's like, what's the thing that we can still get them to buy, spending the most amount of money?
I mean, the only input that Amazon has is the people who interact with its website. I mean, maybe it has other ones, right? And obviously, they make the case that it's, with systems like this, it's $1, one vote, right?
Yeah.
People who spend more money on Amazon come to dictate how the Amazon algorithm, and then to some extent its sort of supply chain function, right? Like, so in that instance, it's people who have more money have more power with the algorithm, and they also have the example of like poorer households might perhaps only have one device with which they connect, kind of thing. So there's a lot less accurate information given to the algorithm than a household that had lots of multiple devices, kind of thing.
And a phone and a computer for everybody. And it's exactly, I mean, it's like when I was living in LA, if you ordered something off of Amazon, it would get to you within 1 to 2 days. Like it was just there, right? When I went back to the town that I was living in, which was much smaller than Los Angeles, slightly less the case. Living out here, it's definitely less the case. You can still get things kind of quickly, but because the town that we live in is like 30,000 people, 40,000 people, not so much. And if you live in a rural village, they're not going to get around to sending you a delivery truck until they absolutely have to, right? Until like someone's driving through that town to get to somewhere else. So affluent neighborhoods definitely play into it as well, right? And you'd have to find a way to democratize that. That's just another thing. Just a marvel of Amazon is its delivery system. It's absolutely insane how well they're able to just model, like, this delivery driver will be here. This one has a runny nose, so he won't be coming into work. This person, okay, we'll be delivering 5 packages there this day. We'll be, so we can drive through that town to get to here, drop off the packages there. It's insane.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you're right about that. But as I was reading this, I was thinking about some of my experiences with Amazon, and a lot of them are secondhand. They're observing other people's interactions with Amazon. Where they have this kind of tracking system, but like the information isn't particularly accurate to some extent. Like they can be 5 doors away for like 3 hours, and then they suddenly jump a bit further away, and then it comes back again. Or sometimes you order something and you intend it to come on a particular day, and then it comes like 3 days earlier or 3 days later or something like that.
Well, that's the thing. They generally give you a like 4 to 6 days because they don't know when.
I mean, to be honest, I'm thinking more of Amazon Prime, so I don't quite know how the sort of Prime delivery service has changed to some extent. But in the book, to some extent, they use that kind of. I think they use an example very very similar to that, like how they organize their deliveries, as an example of them doing something imperfectly, but well enough to suit the service requirements, kind of thing. Like the system functions perfectly well, even if it's not totally accurate, say, or like even if there are certain delays in certain places, kind of thing. But that said, you're quite right. Like the in all instances of this, the takeaway is like the logistical feats of these companies are monumental.
Yeah.
And they rely on a particularly ruthless type of planning.
Yeah.
And I mean, ruthless is the right word in a lot of senses. Like, the first time I read this book, my ears pricked up frequently every time they used the phrase democratic planning.
Yeah.
Because I always assumed they were using the phrase democratic planning to counterpose it to the Soviet Union. And every time they did it, it always struck that raw nerve with me that had this sort of built-in kind of like reflex revulsion toward the idea of planning, just because I'd sort of been so like
primed.
Primed quite for to have that reaction. But on the second reading, what I realised was what they're counterposing democratic planning to is not the Soviet Union at all, but the incredibly undemocratic planning that goes on at Walmart and Amazon.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
Yeah.
If there is a dichotomy in this book, it's not between like socialist planning that would be possible if we were to appropriate contemporary technology, as opposed to planning as it existed in actual existing socialism. The dichotomy is between like the incredibly tyrannical planning that happens now and the possibilities for a much more democratic planning should we wish to institute that system. And I think the takeaway we have to take away
That makes sense.
I think the takeaway from that is that to do that is no simple feat.
Sure.
To institute something that we might want to call socialist democratic planning would not be to take present planning that goes on in the sort of tyrannical top-down way in corporations and tweak it in various ways. Because these corporations are still operating on the principle of profit maximization.
Yeah.
And if we want to have socialist and democratic planning, the first step is going to have to be to remove profit seeking as the primary motivation for how we decide to organize our economy and our social lives.
Absolutely.
And instead to set human need as the sort of prime want of or the prime motivator for economic outcomes.
Just raising the quality of life.
Yeah.
As opposed to just someone making money somewhere.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. And that's going to require all sorts of different like feedback mechanisms that we really don't know anything about yet. Like there is a question of how we're going to work out and decide what use values, I suppose to use a Marxian phrase, we're going to decide to maximize. But maybe you can use something like an algorithm like Amazon's one, given a much more democratic input. Would it organize at least distribution in the way that Amazon does? Or I suppose it has some. The Amazon algorithm has some sway over production, right? Like, if the Amazon algorithm decides that, well, quite a lot of people are going to want X thing to go with Y product, they're going to automatically stimulate the production of this other type of product, kind of thing. So it wouldn't be fair to say that their algorithm only governs distribution. It certainly would govern production as well. Likewise, the way Wal-Mart plans definitely influences the way things are produced, kind of thing.
Yeah,
and
they
what
force
things
them
are
to be.
produced.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it is. Yeah, another huge point of the book is that they make the point that if you were to combine Amazon and Walmart, it would be much larger than the Soviet Union was at its peak, right? Which is pretty staggering. Yeah. It is funny because we're definitely right now in a point of where we all, I think, require a little bit of elucidation on what a planned economy is. Because right now we're kind of in limbo between, like, still having that Soviet Union hangover of, like, you know, here's what you want, here's what you're going to buy kind of thing. That's not super democratic versus the kind of, like, tyrannical buy this approach of these two companies. Yeah, and I mean, it's pretty freaky to think, but it is absolutely up to us on how we're going to view economic planning in between this limbo going forward. Yeah, I mean, I have no idea. I will say, spooky to think of these companies having this much power, though.
Yeah.
Thank God Jeff Bezos stood down.
I don't know about this. Is that what?
I think he went from being the CEO of Amazon to like the executive officer, chief of the board, and some bullshit.
Okay.
So it's like don't worry, guys, I'm getting better.
Totally different.
Yeah, exactly.
Totally different. He'll be starting some kind of like philanthropic venture next, I'm sure.
Yeah, exactly. The Jeff Bezos and Melinda Gates
trying to send people to the moon or something.
Yeah, to a libertarian colony on the moon.
I think maybe there's one other aspect of this of contemporary planning that this book touches on that we haven't quite done yet, and it kind of relates to incentive structures to some extent.
Sure.
Like, there's one myth that we haven't talked about yet, which the book does, is that like it's purely market signals that incentivize certain types of behavior from capitalists.
Okay, yeah.
And one of the there are several one of the things that they fixate on to some extent is quite how significant investors are in this whole process. Like the amount of planning power that investors have, both sort of like hedge fund investors to some extent, but also more significantly like central banks.
Sure.
How central banks like direct revenue and funding to various things dictates very much what products are going to be produced, what services are going to be appear in front of us, kind of thing. I mean, I guess what the most monstrous example of this kind of thing is something like SoftBank, and the way that like they invest in so many like ludicrous tech companies that like anybody with two brain cells can see that they're never going to work.
Yeah.
Or like you only have to look at the economic history of their entire existence and see that their current model does not yield a meaningful profit, but they're kept afloat with this kind of investment from in this case one particular type of one particular investor, but like, the same is true across the board, right?
Same for Tesla. Everybody always says, oh, Tesla has such a high stock price because their product is so valuable, and it's like, what are you talking about? It's because they're just up to market shenanigans.
Well, my understanding is the reason why Tesla became profitable because there is some kind of like law or state funded remuneration in California that has something to do with
fucking California,
like ecological cars being taxed in a different way, or like producers of more ecologically sustainable cars being given some kind of bung from government. I don't quite understand it.
I'm sure that's quite a bit of it. I think it's also just some sketchy thing of like they can buy their own shares and then sell them, and then because they sold them.
Oh, I see. There's some kind of like market wizardry going on.
Yeah, just printing money. Bad.
So there is the aspect of planning which is directed and dictated by the investment of finance coming from another source of tyranny in our world. An
enlightened despot.
The enlightened despots that are hedge funds and index funds and central banks. And then the other thing that they fixate on or focus on is quite how important states have been in the development of certain types of technologies.
Sure.
Like I say, I mean, it's a tired example, and we've talked about it before, I think. So
say the iPhone?
We'll not linger on it particularly long, but yeah. They make significant reference again to the Mariana Mazzucato thesis on the entrepreneurial state. How, like, the iPhone in this instance, all of the component parts of the iPhone were developed by various wings of either the US military or like DARPA.
DARPA.
I mean, they say that DARPA only came into existence because they were fearful after the launch of Sputnik that sort of Soviet technology and technologists and the system for the development of new technologies was so much more advanced and advancing so much more quickly that they couldn't rely on market forces in America, and they had to institute some kind of state-backed technology research to be able to compete with the Soviet Union.
Well, they weren't wrong about that. They're absolutely right.
So yeah, also don't be tricked into thinking that we're reliant on the incentive structures of capitalism to have technological innovation.
Yeah,
because some contrary to what people would like to have you think about the myth of the entrepreneur, the myth of the tech startup guy, the sort of like the sort of sycophantic,
syphilitic,
all the S's way in which people look upon Elon Musk or even worse, Steve Jobs. To think that these people are like
made their own way.
The incentive structures of capitalism are to be, as we've seen, or very short-termist in its thinking, but also very cautious, right? You corporations aren't willing to invest on a 20 or 30 year timeline in the way that governments are able to do. It's not capitalist corporations that are the drivers of innovation. It's state-backed research, either in universities or in DARPA or what have you.
At the end of the day, all coming from your tax money. All coming
Quite.
from you.
Yeah.
In the same way that all of this labor is that Amazon needs to give you the right stuff is just being done by you.
Yes. You should all invoice Jeff Bezos for the time you spend browsing on Amazon. It won't be worth very much to you, but
go for it. Yeah. Do your best. Minimum wage, all the time you spend browsing the internet, I'm sure it's worth quite a bit. The most disgusting Bezos incident has got... I don't know why this one really bothers me, but I get so mad whenever I learn that his house was under construction and he was just like, F it, I'm just going to park my car out front, double park it for like a month. And he wound up owing something absurd, like $360,000 in parking tickets. And he was just like, yeah, fuck it, I don't care. I'll just pay it. I don't care. I don't know why that really bothers me. Maybe it's because like the times I've gotten a parking ticket, it's for like, I was supposed to move my car at 9 a.m. and I moved it at 9:05. Now I owe $70. And that's like quite a bit of my paycheck. And it's just like, yeah, this prick. Come on, what's he doing? He's being bold.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Bastards.
What's he worth? $100 billion? $100 billion? He's got 100 billion votes.
Yeah, exactly.
Nobody cares about you, Jeff.
I don't think he does. Unless you do. Unless you're listening, Jeff. Hello.
Come on the pod.
Come on the pod, Jeff. I don't think I've ever heard Jeff Bezos' voice.
What does he sound like?
You know whose voice I did hear for the first time the other day, and it blew my mind, is Slavoj Žižek, because I'd never heard his voice before.
You've done very well to avoid him. It must have been an active.
It was 100% active. The YouTube algorithm, that planned algorithm, was like, Jack, just watch the goddamn Peterson debate. And I actively avoided doing that for a very long time. And then I finally heard his voice. Not what I expected at all. Very.
You haven't even heard other people's imitations of.
I must have.
Nobody really does a very good Slavoj Žižek impression. So,
but sure, everybody who does it thinks they do a great one. Yeah, that was funny. What were we talking about? I will say, though, I didn't pick up on this on my first read through, but really reading about Otto Neurath and about von Mises and about the Austrian Circle is a lot more interesting this time around because I was able to kind of focus on it a bit more. And Neurath's idea of his big theory was, this was like in and around the First World War. Sure. So his big theory was that during wartime, economies tend to, and also just become in-kind economies, which is basically economies where money means nothing. Because you just need, by necessity, to trade for things that you need. So if that's iron for coal or whatever it is. And same thing with food. And that kind of led him to kind of theorize about planned economies. And this is kind of what became the socialist calculation debate about, like, this is, I hate to say, but a period of nostalgia, possibly for the left, when we were actively debating, well, maybe we should just plan things, as opposed to just having markets. This was at a time when that was actively debated by the world's top economists.
Yeah, they felt the requirement to actually answer the question.
yeah, as opposed to now just being
which speaks to how worried they were. They actually thought like socialist planning in the early part of the 20th century might be a real threat.
Yeah. It's interesting, too, reading about Lenin and how he was just going into power. The Bolsheviks were kind of just like, let's do it like Germany did it during World War I. And it's like, don't do that.
Yeah, it's funny that, isn't it? Because, like, you can make all of these defenses if one wants to. You can make these defenses for Lenin, and the Bolsheviks in general, not just Lenin, not having a particularly well worked out theory of how they were going to transition their economy, not expecting to suddenly find themselves at the sort of vanguard, the head of this.
Sure.
This thing that we did not develop into a world revolution and left them sort of relatively isolated. But when you hear about what Otto Neurath was thinking about at exactly the same time, and writing proposals for, and in the initial stages of potentially implementing, it does make you wonder why they couldn't do a bit better.
Yeah. I suppose if we want to be materialists, war.
Yeah.
One of the worst wars in human history.
Yeah.
And then another one of the worst wars in human history. And then
it's a bum deal. They got a bum deal.
Bum deal. And now they're arresting journalists. That's one thing I've also been, what we will henceforth be calling Zizekking, which is actively avoiding, is that whole news cycle about the Russian journalist who just got arrested. That's a topic for another time. Von Mises, I believe, I could have written this down wrong, but I believe kind of had the idea of like, him and Neurath were like, well, then how, without prices, how would you get people what they want / what they need, right? I mean, what you need versus what you want is like a pretty big discrepancy, right? And in a democratic society, presumably you'd want people to have what they want as well as not just what they need. And maybe I shouldn't say it was von Mises because it could have been someone else. Said that you should just get people to vote.
But Mises is the name of an Austrian economist, which is easiest to pronounce.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. One of these depraved gentlemen said, just get people to vote on what they want, which is such a, like, I don't know, how about this idea? Go to a ballot box, check everything you want. It's like a scroll that's like 50 feet long.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a kind of Adbusters answer, isn't it?
Yeah.
You can imagine, like, people debating Mises' argument at an Occupy encampment in, like, 2010.
Yeah, exactly. Which is where the algorithm comes in about like not telling people what they want, not getting people to just straight up vote on what they want, not getting people to pay for what they want, perhaps predicting what people want. Maybe we should have done this episode before the Stafford Beer reading. Just go beer. What is it that capitalists always say? Conscious consumer or something like that. You're a conscious consumer of podcasts. Go back and listen to it in reverse order. But I mean, that's where Stafford Beer and all these guys come in, right? Because it's not just how do you organize your workplace along democratic lines. It's how do you organize your economy on democratic lines. All of these ideas that Beer had, far-fetched or not, about like popularizing cybersyn and about getting people really involved with this system and not just having it lure over them like a big brother, are important, I think, when you're answering those questions. One that I do not have an answer to.
Well, yeah, I certainly hope that we can. I mean, it's the common retort that people make is they've no interest in being in like democratic meetings to decide every possible thing under the sun.
Understandable.
Yeah, quite. Yeah. But hopefully, if we can reliably and safely offhand some of this sort of like computational work to sort of algorithms which have a democratic mandate to some extent.
Yeah.
I'd be quite comfortable with that.
Yeah. How do you keep the bastards out? How do you keep capitalists out?
Yeah. I mean, there is a really important section in this, which I suppose we should someone might have mentioned too, which is like big pools of data should always be worrisome, I think.
Yeah.
And treated with a tremendous amount of care, because the possibility for their abuse and the sort of like omnipotent reach it could give any singular or small group of unsavory characters should be worrisome.
100%.
And they do sort of leave open that question of like, how are we going to decide? No matter how well you encrypt your data or depersonalize your data. I mean, they make a point in this of saying that you only need even if you depersonalize a certain collection of piece of data, you can potentially overlay it with other pieces of information and sort of try to like. I mean, they make the example of suppose that all of the medical records in the NHS, say, are depersonalized of proper names, but they still have all the times at which you go, and then somehow there's some big leak at Uber, say, and then you can suddenly correlate all of the names of people who took a certain number of Uber journeys with this other section of data, kind of thing. So there's a certain risk of, even if it's depersonalized or anonymized, there's still a danger to some extent.
Absolutely.
I mean, one of the options may be that portion of the CyberSyn system, which was to just delete any information that was seen to be normal.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we're only going to fixate on anything that's sort of out of the ordinary. I don't know how that would correlate with an algorithm, but then I suppose like you could say that the Amazon algorithm could delete any information that wasn't simply the correspondence between people buying one thing and people buying another thing. Kind of thing. Now, I'm sure they're storing all sorts of data and finding other ways to monetize it.
Well, is the danger then in an economy without markets? Because presumably the danger would be you don't want companies getting access to this information. But I mean, without companies, without a profit incentive, who would want this information?
Sure, yeah, I don't know.
It's like, oh, my neighbor bought a catheter. It's like, who cares? I suppose that there's like some privacy stuff.
Well,
there.
yeah, I mean, they do. There's a certain extent to which they do fall back on an argument which I'd be willing to put a lot of stock in, although I can fully understand why people might feel it to be a bit of a cop-out, which would be to say that like human behaviour is incredibly malleable, and sort of the things which incentivize certain types of behaviour are contingent on how a system functions, right? Like you will be a different human being under a different social structure.
Sure. I put a lot of stock in that,
Yeah,
honestly.
yeah.
Because whenever you hear the idea of, like, I call this the Star Trek idea. What was the episode where the people are frozen and they come back and they're like, money?
Yeah, it's the neutral zone.
Neutral zone, thank you.
The neutral zone thesis.
The neutral zone thesis, yeah, exactly.
I've been watching a lot of Star Trek. We should talk about some Star Trek.
Ooh, we should. Deep Space Nine or Next Generation?
No, Next Generation. I've been watching
Really?
all the Q episodes.
Oh, yeah, that's right. We will talk about
I mean, I don't know whether I have very much to say. Although I can recommend...
We've got stuff to say.
Yeah,
We've got stuff to say.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I watched the Borg episodes as well, and I have something to say about that.
Good. But anyway, the neutral zone thesis, which is, okay, you get rid of money, you get rid of prices. It all sounds well and good. It sounds extremely good. Sign me up. How do you get people to do the job that nobody wants to do? How do you get people to work in a feed store? Nobody's going to want to work in a feed store. Honestly, kind of feel like that's a fake argument, but maybe I'll make a fake answer, which is people under a different social order are going to act differently. And I would feel so much better. I think about this literally every single day at work. If I could just attach what I'm doing directly to the customers that I really like, and I like interacting with people. There's one little old lady who comes in every Saturday, and she always gets the same thing because she's got a bunch of calves coming in. She always gets milk powders. She always gets these little calf pellets. And if I was able to divorce my feelings of like inferiority and frustration about the amount of money I'm making and just completely attach it to like, I'm doing something to help out the calves, help out the little old lady, help out my community. And with the added benefit of, like, I probably wouldn't have to toil for as many hours as I do. You know what I mean?
For a
Like,
pittance.
Exactly. Not feeling insecure.
And I could probably step away from it at a certain point and go and do something else.
Yeah, exactly. It's what was the Marx quote? Something along the lines of, like, I want everyone to be a fisherman and a doctor and a schmuck without ever becoming a schmuck, a doctor, and a fisherman.
Your version of that quote much better.
Yeah, exactly.
Not that Marx isn't an inspiring, but
yeah.
I have much more affinity with being a schmuck than with being a philosopher. So.
Same thing. Anything else for this book before we move on to the more important segment of the show?
Yeah, I guess I'm left with the feeling that money and prices do nothing but control access.
Sure, absolutely. It's the Tom thesis of, if anyone ever talks about just distribution, look at them strangely because they're not your friend.
Was I just doing that, or was I doing the opposite of that?
No, the opposite of that.
Okay, good.
Because it's about production. It's about
Sure,
really
okay,
organizing the forces, you know?
Yeah, I don't know what I mean by that.
No, you're absolutely right. Yeah. It's all a lie.
Yeah.
Everything you've been told is a lie.
Yeah, we've got all of the worst parts of a planned economy.
Yeah.
And none of the benefits.
Exactly. Even though we're the ones doing the work.
Yeah.
God damn it. Maybe we should talk a little bit about the Frederick Jameson bit, because like I was saying before we started recording, first time I read this was very confused why they put that Frederick Jameson bit in there, other than just like nodding to, okay, we're kind of taking your idea a little bit here.
Yeah, I can't remember it, so you'll have to explain it to me.
It was just the general idea where they quote him at some point as saying, like, Frederick Jameson, cultural theorist kind of, I guess, has tried reading one of his books, and I was kind of like, yeah, okay. Smart guy. Cultural theorist, talks a lot about utopia, cool stuff. Refer to our Jack Snipes episode for more talk on utopia. But he brings up about how this Ernst Blockian idea about how we're so frustrated with our social relations and in such a rut and unable to see better alternatives that we can't see alternatives. That's obvious, but it's like we can't see utopia in any of our art. We can't see utopia in anything that we create. And he makes the point that actually there are elements of utopia in our society, I suppose. Maybe this is what he's saying. And we can see utopia in something like Wal-Mart. And that's obviously where they get the name of the book, right? Because we could use what Wal-Mart is trying to do for evil reasons, for good reasons. And we could give everybody a good quality of life forever.
Yeah.
Based off of these ideas.
Yeah.
I didn't remember getting much from that the first time through. But then I liked it this time through.
Yeah, I mean, there's a certain amount of the kind of like... there are things about these systems that are remarkable.
Yeah, totally.
And incredibly desirable.
You can't just be
and
like...
I think there's something... Is it in this that they quote... they reference... Marx's both criticism and admiration for capitalism. And the source of Marx's... dismay, I suppose, being that there was so much potential being so thoroughly squandered.
Yeah.
Which is very similar to what Jameson was getting at. Which
Absolutely,
is like, there are sort of utopian building blocks amongst us.
Yeah. You just don't want to look at them because they're so horrible to look at.
Yeah.
It is the kind of like, should we be having the kind of like typical left reaction of like corporations? Ugh! You should, because they're all horrible.
Yeah, I mean, this book starts with a massive disclaimer. Obviously, they're not celebrating Walmart. And there are sections of this book which go into great detail about how horrendous it is to be an Amazon employee.
Yeah.
So I suppose there I am making the same disclaimer, just so you know.
yeah, exactly.
Close down all Amazon distribution centers.
Yes. Oh my God, please. Yeah, it's no good. I remember the Supreme Court not too long ago ruled against the people bringing the case to court, which were workers, I believe, of Amazon, that they were suing because every day if you work in an Amazon warehouse, you have to get for 30 minutes, sometimes up to an hour, checked by security in a big long line to make sure you're not stealing. And Amazon was like, we're not going to pay you for that hour of your time. And the workers were like, of course you are. We're going to sue you. Supreme Court ruled they don't have to pay you.
Oh my god.
Which is super dope. And as someone who after work, maybe I won't say that bit. I was going to say something about my labor being exploited. I'm not going to say that.
Yeah. We'll talk about it later.
We'll talk about it
I'll
later.
cut everything. You can cut everything.
What we should talk about now, Dan, tell us about what Star Trek episodes you've been watching.
Oh. Well, I watched both of the Best of Both Worlds episodes.
What'd you think?
Yeah, good.
Yeah,
I mean, I've seen them before. Obviously, I've seen it all before.
Yeah.
I wanted to revive. There's a certain extent to which my frustration with the sense that the Borg were meant to have somehow decided that a singular human consciousness rather than a collective consciousness was better.
Yeah.
And that had been my argument against the Borg. Now, I have some feeling... I'm still quite convinced that is the way that the Borg narrative develops into Voyager. But in that episode, that's not what's going on at all. The only reason why they take Picard is because he will be a better communicator.
He'll be useful.
Yes. Because he'll be more relatable to the people that they intend to go and assimilate. Now, it makes you beg the question, like, presumably they've been assimilating whole loads of sort of, like, humanoid species who organise their societies in similar ways to the humanoid species in the Alpha Quadrant do.
Do you see many non-human Borg? I can't think of any.
Well, that was the funny thing. Like these Borg aren't meant to be human at all, but they all look human.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, later on in other episodes, I think you see like they make a big point of making it clear that there are Klingon ones and there are Vulcan ones.
Maybe my main question is, do we ever see a Ferengi Borg?
I don't think there are any.
It's impossible because they're the perfect species.
The unassimilatable species.
Unassimilatable. They go, we can't do anything. Their brain's too big.
So that was my only takeaway from that.
What'd you think about the Riker stuff? That's one of the only episodes where I'm not just like, oh, Riker, here we go. I'm like, Riker, cool, good for you. Because
I like the question of like well, there is the question. So many of these characters are meant to be like incredibly ambitious.
Exactly.
And there is this dichotomy between like career and ambition in Starfleet, and then also this idea that he's found sort of family and community in a place where he wants to be, and a place where he can sort of find other ways to fulfill himself. And I don't know whether that's fully because in the end he just makes the decision to stay. Exactly. And he never really it's never really explained why. They do.
It's because he got his chance to be a captain, and he was like, not so much. I like being
okay.
That's I don't know. I love it because ambition sucks. And
I just like it if it would be maybe the takeaway is clear and I just didn't get it. I've made the same realization, or in at least in articulating it now, that there are other things. There are things other than sort of like pure career ambition.
Well, and that's why it's called Best of Both Worlds. Because he had the best of both worlds. And then he was like, this sucks. Give me the first world.
He got to be on the Enterprise and be captain.
Yeah, exactly.
He even got to wear the pips.
He got to wear the pips. Yeah. Who's the, what's her name? The lady who...
Yeah, what happens to her?
Yeah, I know.
I wonder whether she makes a reappearance. I'm not sure whether she does. We're talking about the other first officer. The person that becomes his first officer.
Yeah.
For that intervening period.
That episode is much darker when you watch the first episode of Deep Space Nine, though, because you're like, whoa, they killed Sisko's family doing that. Or the Borg killed Sisko's family, and it was Picard.
Right.
Isn't it right in the Battle of Wolf 9 or whatever?
Yeah.
I think so.
359.
359, yeah.
Get it right, Jack.
God damn it. Turn off the recording.
Does Sisko's family die at Wolf 359?
That's why he hates Picard.
Okay.
Because in that whole first episode, Picard's like, hey, buddy, how's it going? Good to meet you. And he's like, I hate you. You killed my family.
I'm going to have to go back and... I remember finding the early stages of Deep Space Nine very frustrating, so...
Sure.
But maybe I'll go back and watch that first episode. Maybe I won't.
It's a good episode, because there's a bit of him sitting with his kid on the bridge, and it's like... It's good. It's very good. Sisko rocks. Love Sisko.
The other episode that I watched recently, I've been watching a lot of the Q episodes, but the one that I quite enjoyed was, I think it's called Threads. It's the one that we were discussing a little bit, where Picard gets shot with some kind of disruptor, and it interferes with his artificial heart, and then Q sends him back in time so he can have another go at not getting stabbed by a Nausicaan in a bar fight.
It's got the classic line, what is it, play dumb jut human? Or whatever. That's so good.
Play dumb jut human.
So good.
I've never, I've heard about Damjot. I mean, I've never seen it play. It's basically just billiards, but
with like some lights.
Yeah.
Dumb jut human play dumb jut.
It's pinball billiards, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah.
And
the best part about that episode, other than that line, is about how they refuse to get a younger actor to play Picard, and it's just Picard. Jean-Luc Picard, as old as he is, playing a young Picard. And then they just explain it away as like, oh, they all see you as young.
Yeah. He's like, I don't look any older.
Yeah.
But they do have a younger him in some of the flashbacks, I think.
Yeah, they do.
But
Great episode, though.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. Your
classic.
And it has some similar. Yeah, I mean, that's a different idea, isn't it? That like the sort of like reckless person he is in his youth makes him into the kind of like square sort of like a stickler for the rules captain that he is, kind of thing. He couldn't be boring in his youth. It wouldn't make him the same person he ended up being. There was So
what's the moral of that one? Is it just no regrets?
Well, I don't know, because I came away feeling quite uncomfortable with it, to be fair. I mean, just as someone who's quite happy to accept mediocrity.
Sure, yeah. Hey, welcome to join the club.
Yeah.
I think
suffice to say, sorry, we've not. I mean, what happens is he does successfully not get stabbed by the Nausicaan, but then when we go back to the present day, he's not captain of the Enterprise anymore. He's just some sort of schmuck science officer, sort of like, I don't know.
Oh yeah, that's right. And he's getting ordered around. By
everybody.
And Geordi's like, "What did you just say to me?"
Yeah. He's working in the mailroom.
That is kind of depressing, because I think that has the opposite moral from Best of Both Worlds, where it's like, dude, just whatever. You're happy. Be happy.
Yeah, that's very judgmental of someone who.
A petty officer.
Yeah,
it's like you suck if you're just a petty officer.
Yeah. I watched another one called Family, which has Worf's parents in it.
Oh, the Russians. So good. Good.
Which is nice.
They're like, we love you, Worf.
That's the one directly after Picard gets assimilated by the Borg, and he goes back to his brother's vineyard and has a big fight with his brother. And,
that's right.
And also, there's other things going on as well.
Writing in that show it's good.
It's good, yeah. I also wanted to take back. I trotted out this sort of quite tired line a few weeks ago, last week perhaps, suggesting that like character development and interpersonal relationships in Deep Space Nine was somehow superior to Next Generation. Okay. And then every time I watch Next Generation, it's so much sort of deeper and more interesting than I am inclined to make it out to be. Also, best character, Guinan.
Oh, of course. Yeah. Of course, best scene is when Guinan pulls out that huge gun that is just behind the bar. It's just like, okay.
I haven't seen that yet.
What episode is that? There's like a fight and she pulls out like a big gold gun and she shoots it into the ceiling and somehow doesn't. I
might have to go back and watch the sort of Mark Twain episodes soon. Oh, yeah. But I watched that the one. What makes me think of it is that one of the early Q episode, the first Q episode where Guinan is on the Enterprise, they have some kind of prior relationship.
Yeah.
And their interaction, Guinan and Q's interaction, is hilarious.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Look like they're going to start like shooting lightning bolts from their fingers or something at each other.
You had a big theory about Q. What was it? Wasn't it? The other day you were telling me about like a big Q theory. It was.
Okay.
What was this?
Okay, yeah. Who is Q?
Who is Q? Yeah. That's right. And it was something to do with the episode where he loses his powers. Do you remember what I'm saying? You said something and I was like, wow.
No, I thought you were making like a QAnon joke.
Oh. Yeah, that's what I was doing. I was making a really funny joke. No, you had something very insightful to say about Q and I forget what it was.
Well, I wish I could remember it.
Me too.
I like being insightful. It happens so rarely. I did watch that episode.
Yeah, that's a good one. That could be the best Q episode. It's got the mariachi band.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Worf is like, can we just kill this guy? Worf like outwardly is just like murder him.
Yeah. He's now vulnerable. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
He literally Picard literally has to ask Worf to leave the room. It's just like Worf might like snap his neck immediately.
Worf rocks. You know what I saw the other day is the episode where Tasha Yar dies.
Oh god.
And for some reason I was expecting it to not be in the like comical way that it is, where she gets killed by a tar monster.
Yeah.
It's just like, wait,
it's
what?
in that period of the first season of Star Trek Next Generation when it's fully under the influence of the original series.
Absolutely, yeah.
Down to the way it's filmed and the sort of music and everything.
The sets, everything.
Yeah.
That's so. It's just like, wait, she's
She
dead.
gets eaten by a tar monster, and then somebody throws a polystyrene rocket. No, not quite, but
Exactly.
yeah.
Man,
I remember that. I remember watching that episode as a kid, though, and like, what, they actually killed a real life? Killed one of the characters. My god.
It's good that they did that in the first season, though, because then you're constantly like, is Picard gonna die in Best of Both Worlds? Like, Jesus.
Is there a possibility?
Yeah. Is his contract up?
Yeah.
Yeah. What did Tasha Yar wind up doing with her career, the actor?
I don't know.
Not anything
Going
as
to
cool
Star
as
Trek
that.
cons, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
West is a pretty good gig. If you can get it.
Sure. Sure.
I don't know. Maybe it's tedious and horrible.
Yeah, well,
Depends how much you like Trekkies. I
yeah,
suppose.
exactly. Oh, those people, disgusting.
Yeah.
It'd be worth. I only ever watched any of the original series when it was just like on TV randomly.
Yeah, same. I've never watched it.
It'd be kind of good to watch some of it.
I don't know.
I'm sure it's excruciating.
Yeah,
but it'd be good to watch.
I mean, it's probably you could probably download a list of like which are the key episodes to watch.
But that would be like the funny episodes where it's like the guy where he's like fighting the dragon of Vasquez Rocks or something. Yeah, I'm sure you got some good. The movies got some good movies.
Yeah,
very good movies.
Yeah.
What's the best non-original series movie? Nemesis.
No, it's probably. I mean, I've seen First Contact a million times.
Sure.
I'm a big fan of First Contact. But also I think Generations is incredibly cinematic, and I think for the time when it was made, it clearly had a lot of money in it. Go back and watch the like space fights in Generations. And for the sort of time, like the models and the computer generated aspects of it, I remember being really, really cool. And it's very like, it's not like the TV show. Like, it's very big screen and sort of sweeping, and it's all, I don't know. Like, yeah.
The new movies were I'm not gonna say good. They were definitely entertaining. They were definitely not super Star Trek-y. I didn't hate them. Okay. I did really dislike. I really would like to move past Kirk and Spock. I really dislike Spock's character in that because he was just like not really Spock like. He's a lot more angry. It's like he wasn't very stoic at times. He was like he would like fight people and it's like Spock, stop it. You're killing
I
him.
wonder whether he's meant to be younger to some extent, and so they make I guess they're making much more of a deal of his sort of human side.
Yeah, true. They're entertaining.
I think the first one is fun and entertaining.
Yeah.
I think the second one is abysmal.
What is the second one where they go through like the portal, or is that the first one? That's the first one.
The first one is the one with the time travel, right? And
that's right. Yeah.
Eric Banner is like a Romulan.
Yeah.
That's fine. It's just fun. It's just silly.
Sure,
and fun.
exactly. Yeah.
The second one, my big complaint. Well, it's incredibly fascist in its aesthetic.
Wait, what happens in this one?
It's the one that's kind of Wrath of Khan, sort of.
Okay,
the one with Benedict Cumberbatch.
Yeah.
In it.
Oh yeah.
And they've all got the. I'm pretty. Well, yeah. I'm pretty sure that the main Starfleet person who ends up being a villain is the guy that played RoboCop. And
Sylvester Stallone.
No, that's a good movie though. I should watch that one again.
Yeah. The other guy, Dominic.
I have no idea. I don't know.
Rab.
I'm not even sure whether it's the case, but it's definitely like it's more of a like RoboCop inspired Earth than it
Yeah.
is a Star Trek inspired Earth.
Yeah.
And their uniforms their sort of official dress uniform that they have is so fascist it's
Yeah.
untrue. And all of the environments are really grey and
Yeah.
drab and boring.
Oh, is
There's
this the one
nothing
where-
utopian about the world at all.
Is this one where San Francisco gets destroyed? Where they like crash a ship into San
Yes.
Francisco?
Yeah,
That was the worst
yeah.
decision ever.
And the other thing that I really hate about it is that, like, I came up with this idea that, like, it was made by someone who sort of watched Star Trek, but I mean, I do know, I have it. And my understanding is that J.J. Abrams isn't a very big Star Trek fan.
Sure.
And obviously he had a hand in all of them. I think more the first two than the third one. Maybe he didn't have a hand in the third one at all, or maybe he just produced it. I don't know. But the second one, like, has all the words and the sort of had Star Trek ideas, but I feel like deploys them in all of the wrong way.
Yeah.
It just doesn't have any reverence for any of the material of Star Trek.
100%.
I think the third one has a lot more reverence for Star Trek. I don't know. I think Simon Pegg wrote some of it, and Simon Pegg's more of a Star Trek fan. It's silly in the way that the first one is. And I watched it recently, and it's not as good as I remember it being.
Yeah.
But yeah, the third one's fine. Watch the first one, watch the third one.
Yeah.
Skip the second one.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's a big franchise. What do you expect?
Mm-hmm.
Expect big explosions.
Yeah.
Wonder what the biggest explosion in Next Generation is. Maybe when they blow up the Borg, or probably like a supernova, but I'm not going to count that.
Yeah.
One of my favorite episodes that I can't remember the name of that I'd like to go back and rewatch is the one where I love the like creature episodes where they like new species episodes, and there's one where they find like a space whale and it like gives birth or something at the end of the episode, and then it like floats away. Maybe I'm crazy. Someone winds up in the whale or something like that. I forget exactly what happens.
I mean, there's some aspects of that sound a bit like the pilot episode. You know, the Encounter at Farpoint, where they're more like squid space aliens.
Yeah. No, it's not that one. It's like there's like one monolithic space creature.
Alien, yeah. There were some space whales in Discovery. A few episodes of Discovery. There's some space whales.
Love space whales.
Yeah.
Love whales.
They're only like bit part characters. They're not main characters, unfortunately. So if you want like a main character space whale
love
episode,
a main character space
I'm
whale
not sure
episode.
where you're going to get that one from.
Have you been watching any of the short discoveries? I forget what they're called. They're like Star Trek bits or something like that.
No, I don't know what this is.
I think they're just like bits. They're like 15-minute episodes. I forget what they are. But they're just like stories from the Star Trek universe.
It's a bit of a cheat.
Yeah.
15
I haven't heard
minutes.
great things, but maybe they're good.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I would imagine
Okay.
to get to other solar systems, they planned their economies.
Yeah.
There are no markets.
I mean, it was a planned economy that built the Enterprise. That's for sure.
Certainly. I'd imagine Klingons could perhaps have some kind of wage form, but you never know. Were they Klingons? Play Domjot? Play Gomjot? Whatever.
No, Norsicans.
Norsicans. Yeah. They stole that from Warhammer.
Big mean guys.
Yeah.
Three
Yeah.
spiky face teeth.
Yeah.
Stay away from them.
Yeah. Don't
Don't
play
mess with
Gomjot.
Norsicans. Don't play Domjot with Norsicans.
Yeah. That's our one takeaway from this. This book rocked. People's Republic of Wal-Mart.
Yeah.
Read it.
Buy
It's
it,
all
read
good. Watch some more Star Trek, or not. Watch Conan the Barbarian. I wish I liked that movie, but I don't. And remember
On that hot take.
on that hot take, remember, I don't know, I've been trying to give a good sign off. I don't have anything. Dan, this has been Auxiliary Statements. I'm Jack.
And thank you for listening, everybody.
We'll see you next time, maybe.
If there is one.
Oh! The music you heard this episode was Music to Kill Bad People To by King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard. If you like this song, you can check it out and much, much more on their Bandcamp at kinggizzard.bandcamp.com. Be sure and follow us up on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And if you like what you heard, be sure and tune in next week for some more commie discussion. Till next time.